Your favorite drink-up song in rugby? I want to know. My daughter was a rugby player, and she used to take me. She was a Kenyan, and she would take Dad. Hey, come, let's go to the drink-up afterwards. And my daughter, I'm thinking, what's this all about? And they'd have rugby shirts, and wow. That's all I could say. So I just want to know.
Well, it would have to be the song of the British select side, "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." That would have to be my favorite one. Mm-hmm. It's quite sacrilegious. I think if you're very religious, you would take umbrage with it, but that's my favorite.
And I will not ask for the lyrics.
and I won't give them.
Tonight I'm going to be interviewing the four of you. And I think probably this is one of the first times where the four of you not only get together, but we'll talk through the Charles Taylor case. Help me to frame the roles of each of them. And David Crane was there at the beginning as the founding, I guess he uses the term, founding chief prosecutor. And walk me through this. So David Crane.
David Crane was, of course, the first prosecutor of the court. So his role was to create a viable office, an efficient office, to carry out our mandate, which for the special court was a bit more selective. They actually have the mandate that is what the international courts can do, and that is to deal with those who bear the greatest responsibility. So he had a more selective mandate, which in some ways made it easier, otherwise didn't. So he had to identify the potential subjects, potential suspects, and then he had to oversee the creation of his investigative capacity, his prosecutorial capacity. And then he had to decide, ultimately, we've gathered all this evidence, here's what my teams tell me about who we have sufficient evidence to indict. Now, I have to decide. And when it came to Charles Taylor, he had to have the courage to say, yes, we have the evidence sufficient to indict this man. And interestingly, you know, David was involved from the beginning in outreach. And he would go out to these different locales, and it was a very interactive outreach, and he would ask them at one point, who do you think bears greatest responsibility for the crimes committed in your country? And virtually all the time, they said Charles Taylor. So he had the courage to convict, or to indict Charles Taylor. And then he had the courage to go out to another country when Charles Taylor left Liberia to say, please give him to us. And it was the courage that was expected of him as prosecutor, because as a prosecutor you act independently of any of this political stuff. And he did. So that was him. He got us going. He made the ultimate decisions about who we would indict, including having the courage to indict a sitting head of state, who was very, very powerful in that area, and to then try to use legal means to have him transferred to our custody.
You were involved in, as a consultant to David at that time in creating, working on the indictment?
Yeah, yeah. I was involved in the initial indictments, the initial investigations, initial indictments. And there was never a conflict in our office about should we indict him or not. As soon as we evaluated the evidence that we had, he was clearly someone that we should indict. We had other discussions in our office about people that did not end up getting indicted. But Charles Taylor was always, it was clear to all of us working on that case, building that evidence, that this man was one of those who should be indicted. Well, that was Dave. What a crucial role he had. Desmond de Silva was there at the same time as the deputy prosecutor. Yeah. And then Desmond stepped in, and it was his job eventually to reevaluate the evidence that we had against Charles Taylor, to work to try to secure his transfer to the court. And if we had secured that transfer, and in fact in 2006, he asked me to come back to the special court, and I spent most of 2006 evaluating the evidence, saying, yes, we do have enough. Maybe we should amend the indictment to have fewer charges. It would still be reflective, and helping put together the initial disclosures. So Desmond
as a consultant?
As a consultant.
Right.
So Desmond used his skills to assess where we were at, And once he was satisfied that we had enough truly to go forward with an effective prosecution, to use his skills diplomatically to try to get the Mr. Taylor transferred to us, and how critical that role was, and how well he performed that, just as Dave Crane had so well performed his role. And then Stephen Rapp came on board at the time that we were in the final stages of preparing to prosecute
Where did he come
Charles
from?
Taylor.
Steve, was he on?
He was at ICTR. He's at
Okay.
the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda.
Okay.
And so he came, and Stephen Rapp is a dynamic man, as are both Desmond and David. And Stephen is a very, very knowledgeable and skilled prosecutor, lots of hands-on experience, just as Desmond de Silva had. And so he actually helped us with a lot of the questions that we weren't clear about. So we would have discussions. I would say, I want to do this about this witness or this issue.
At this time, you're now on staff.
Not yet.
Not yet.
He brought me on. He came on, I think, the end of 2006 and brought me on February of 2007. So throughout the trial, we would go to Stephen and would say, we got this issue. I think this, this, my second chair, if you will, my next senior attorney, very skilled. I respect his opinion. He's not so sure. So we would talk with a lot of tactical things with Stephen. And Stephen took two of our witnesses, the former vice president to Charles Taylor, and for some 2 months, president of Liberia, Moses Blah. Stephen led his evidence. And then we called our evidence custodian, and Stephen led his evidence as well. And Stephen also played a critical role in keeping the funds flowing for the court, because it was a critical time in terms of funding for the court. So again, what a critical function he performed. And we had, when Stephen left, and before the next prosecutor was chosen, we had an acting prosecutor, Joseph Kamara, who kept things on an even keel, kept us moving forward, again helped with the fundraising, and he was someone that I also would talk with about tactical decisions in the case. So everyone had fit in at a different point in time in the development of this case, and basically performed a very critical role for that particular point in time.
A critical component that there was that continuum throughout that trial is Brenda Hollis.
I don't feel that sense, and it's not a false sense of modesty, but these trials are the result of the work of so many people, and the conduct of the investigations, the development of the indictment, the pretrial activity, the course of the trial itself. And so it's good to have sort of a continuing influence with a vision of the strategy, and to be sure that we stay online with that strategy, or to be able to adapt it depending on how the evidence comes out. But the success of a trial is always because of the many, many people who are so skilled and talented and dedicated. So this wasn't, Charles Taylor trial wasn't Brenda Hollis at all. Charles Taylor trial was the investigators, the support personnel, the attorneys that I was so privileged to work with, the former prosecutors who brought it so far, Stephen Rapp, who helped us throughout. It is a team effort, and it must always be seen as a team effort.
When you're announcing the verdict, did you have any, were you tipped off as to what the game was?
Oh, no. And we weren't tipped off at all. I had two scenarios to prepare for my press conference afterward. One was a full acquittal, and one was conviction on some or all counts, because we had no idea. And you're on tenterhooks in there. And then especially when they were saying, oh, you didn't prove this, you're thinking, oh, my goodness sakes. So no, we didn't know. And the one thing I told the team is, no matter what they say in there, you cannot throw up. So no, we didn't know that at all.